I totally committed when I was 7 years old. I just kind of like, this is what I want to do. Never a second thought. And the real blessing is I had parents who saw my giftings, and I mean, I've talked to people and they teach art, and I've asked them, how come you never went the direction of being, full-time artist? And they go, well, my parents said, well, you should probably have a backup, take classes in business, take something else, go to the university and that sort of thing. And my dad never once ever said you should have a backup. He goes, you have a gift from God, you have a gifting, and you should pursue it. But I also had teachers who said you have a gift and you should pursue it. So my art teacher used to tell me, and I started studying when I was 10 with the portrait painter teacher, and he used to say, faith in God, confidence in the abilities have given you. And I've always thought, because once you lose your confidence in this business, it's over. And I give the analogy when I teach people, it's like I used to be very much into athletics and sports. If you're at the plate and there's that 90-mile-per-hour fastball coming at you, and if you're overthinking it and you've lost your confidence, but you can't hit this guy, you're going to strike out. So you have to be extremely confident in your giftings and all the tools that you have. Otherwise, this is a highly competitive field, extremely competitive field. And people at the top there, they're all real good. It's like guitarists for rock bands. There's so many good guitarists, from Jimi Hendrix to Eddie Van Halen and everybody in between. Pat Metheny, they all have their different styles, but they're all really good. And I can tell you across the line, they're all very confident in their abilities, and they're not self-destructive, like going, oh my God, I'm not any good, I'm going to quit. After they'll listen to Eddie Van Halen or Jimi Hendrix, it's like, no, they have a different style, and they believe in their giftings, and you just have to find out kind of where you fit. And I'm going to date myself right here, but I'm old enough to remember there was a guy. What was his name? I can't remember. He played the trombone. He did Moonlight Serenade, trombone leader. Anyway, he was intimidated by Benny Goodman, because he was called the king of swing, and everybody danced to swing. And he realized, that's just not me. So he started doing things that are more like ballads, things like Moonlight Serenade. And I'll remember it afterwards, after we're done. But that meant a lot to me. It's kind of like, there's some people who are just really good at painting animals and horses or people. You have to just kind of find where you're at. So I've always been attracted to painting people and telling stories. So I've stuck with that. And so that helped me when I became an illustrator, because a lot of illustration is telling stories. And when you're young, your parents, we read stories to our kids, and so parables are stories, and so those are important. So if your giftings are there, then why fight it? Why try to be something else? And especially if you're starting out, it's really easy just to be overwhelmed and awed by somebody who's really good at their field, especially if they're very successful. It's like, wow, now I have to do that. Well, maybe if that's your leaning, but if it's not your leaning, you're in for a host of heartbreaks, because it's just not your leaning, And also along the way, you need, people to tell you. You need people to speak truth to yourself. And that's another thing about my dad. My dad was probably the biggest influence on me, because I would do something and he was the type of dad that would say, "Frank, that is so great. It's beautiful." My dad would go, "Well, it needs a little work here and a little work there." So here's a clear example. Did you ever see American Idol?
Yes.
I watched it early on. They used to have these kids who didn't make it, and they would sing, and they were horrible, right? And the judges would say, "You're horrible," and the person auditioning would say, "But everybody says I'm great. Everybody says I'm wonderful." They go, "Well, they lied to you." Right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very thankful that a lot of my teachers spoke truth to me, were honest with me. And I mean, sports are very truthful, especially if you're running, let's say, a 100-yard dash, 100-meter dash, right? You're in your lane. First person that goes across the line, that guy's the fastest. It's not opinion, it's the fastest. So